Welcome everyone to our webinar. My name is Christina, and we have here Reiko and I. This is our third webinar since the fire. We are both architects. I am in the San Gabriel Valley area, do mostly single-family residents in Pasadena, Altadena, and San Marino area. So since the fire, Reiko and I, we've been looking at the aftermath of the houses that remain, and we just have a lot of questions on what happened and how these houses are able to, to not get damaged or some damage, but be able to withstand even after the fire. So for this webinar, we decided we want to look into the building codes. And we have here our guests, Stephanie and Stephanie, who are landscape architects, and they will be sharing with us regarding defensible space and landscaping, which is also a very important element in, doing fire safe design. So, Rachel, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I'm also a registered architect in California, and I have done my master's in architecture from UC Berkeley. I've worked up in the Northern California region for a little bit before coming down here. But my passion is in residential architecture, and I live in Los Angeles County, and most of the parts that I have worked in have been in the fire zone area. So anyway, Stephanie and Stephanie, would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'll start. I'm Stephanie Harris, and I work for Grandview Design Studio, or a landscape architecture firm. And I would say most of our projects are residential projects on the Palos Verdes Peninsula. So we've been for many years, both Stephanie and I have experience in producing the fuel modification plans that are required by the LA County Fire Department. And those are landscape plans basically where, we have to show that the types of planting that are allowed, the types, what plants can be put closer to the house or farther away from the house and that type of thing. And with that, I'll let the other Stephanie introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Oberk, and also a landscape architect with Grandview Design Studio. Our company is located in Torrance, and I do want to say that because our team lives and works in the South Bay area, we really feel it important and have a desire to share what we know with everybody in our community, with the hope that that we can do what we can to keep our community neighbors and their properties safe. So that is why we really wanted to get involved in participating in these presentations. So thank you very much, Leiko, for inviting us.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. Okay,
You're welcome.
Yeah, yay. So, why are we doing this webinar? So I guess, because of the recent events with the wildfires, we are interested in finding out what are the fire code related home hardening measures that every home should have. So we're going to be discussing the California Fire Code requirements for your home. Also, we're going to be talking about homeowners insurance discounts, FireWise Community, and wildfireprepare.org. And we'll also be talking about defensible space and fuel modification plans today. So, understanding wildfire risks to your home. So wildfires are becoming more and more frequent and intense. Almost every single year in California, there is some kind of wildfire somewhere. Homes in the fire-prone areas need more improved fire resistance. We need to stop acting like as if, we are surprised about the wildfire. We need to be prepared so that we can, safely, I guess, protect our home and protect ourselves. We're also going to be speaking about homeowners insurance because the homeowners insurance premiums are rising faster than expected rate of inflation. The homeowners insurance jumped 11.3% on average nationwide in 2023. Homeowners in highest risk zip codes that faced climate-related perils paid 82% more premiums than those in other zip codes from 2018 to 2022. There's always a California FAIR Plan, which is the state-issued insurance, but those are not that great because they tend to have high premiums and they don't cover as many things. So California has high fire hazard severity zones, and that had recently got updated in the end of March. And so if you are zoned, reclassified as being part of the fire zone, then your insurance can double, or it can, go up, or it can be canceled altogether. And so the other thing is that even if your home was not designated as part of the fire zone per this map, your city or jurisdiction might also still classify your whole city as part of the fire map. So this is the link to the Cal Fire map, and I'm going to show you here. This is where it will take you. And for example, this is the Palos Verdes Peninsula, and this dashed red line is actually the older map. And like I said, it had just recently got rezoned. And so this on the right side, the red and the yellow and orange, is actually the new map. So you could kind of see what's going on. And to my surprise, I guess I thought that like the fire map was going to be more intense, but it looks like the most of Palos Verdes actually over here got reclassified as not being part of the fire zone, which is really, really crazy, even like all the way around here. So let's take a look in Altadena and Pasadena area. What are some of the changes that happen here? So this is Altadena, and so what I guess, like, it definitely grew for sure. So there's some area, oh, well, this area, I guess, used to be the fire zone, but it's not the fire zone anymore. But along here, this is all new. And it looks like they started to classify some area as moderate or, high. And so before, they only had very high fire severity zone or not, or regular. So they only had one or the other. But now they have all these three different kinds of areas. So let's take a look. Pacific Palisades. It looks like the new fire zone did grow, a little bit more, but relatively kind of similar from what it used to be. So anyway, let's continue on. I think the link is in the chat if you guys are interested in, checking out your own, I guess, home designation. So be sure to contact your city to find out if the city has had imposed anything, further other than, what the state map shows. So let's dive into the fire code and home hardening requirements. So specifically, we're going to be talking about these specific fire code measures today. We're going to be speaking about fire-resistant roofing, multi-pane windows, exterior wall materials, ember-resistant vents, and defensible space. So,
all right, so here's a few items, kind of a little game. So the one on the left and one on the right, these are roofing materials. So if you can guess, the one on the left, is that one flammable, or the one on the right, is that one flammable? So roofing material is one very important item that we need to be aware of. And so I guess put in the chat if you would like, if you think, the left one is flammable or the right one is flammable. And so the answer is, let's go to the slide. The answer is the right one is Class A cement tile roofing, which is not flammable. And the one on the left is just regular wood shingles, which are flammable wood shake, which are really pretty, and they are very common in San Gabriel Valley area where I live. But that is highly flammable roofing material. And so for roofing materials, they are classified as Class A, B, and C. And for the fire areas, we would need to install Class A tile roofing. And so Class B and C, they can withstand moderate to light fire testing. So some examples for Class B and Class C, would be the flame retardant treated wood shakes, which are Class B, or just regular wood shakes, like the one in this picture, which is Class C. And so for the fire zone, we would need to install Class A roofing, which would be asphalt shingle roof or composite roof, and also built up roofing, clay tile roof, and standing seam metal roof. So these are like, some of these are more like concrete tiles, lightweight concrete tiles, which, in their specification, it would classify it as Class A, and it will also give you testing numbers to verify that these are non-combustibles and are approvable by the jurisdiction for high fire zones. So yeah, these are some of the things that you need to look into, when you want to replace your roof, when your house is in a fire zone. So next.
So now we have I guess wall coverings. So we have a type on the left and then type on the right. Raise your hands or write in the chat if you feel like the one on the left is more combustible or the one on the right is more combustible. Or if you could write in the chat if left or right is more combustible. I'll give you 2 seconds. Okay. All right, moving on. So the answer is the one on the right is more combustible, and this one on the left is made out of hardy panel. So this looks like wood, but it's actually not wood. It's fiber cement boards. And so I guess the fiber cement boards come in lots of different kinds of, shapes and sizes. They can look like wood siding. They can also have this wood shingle kind of look as well. So for the fire zone, exterior materials, and it's not just the wall coverings, it's also the underside of the eave or anything, decking or anything. The exterior materials need to be either ignition resistant, non-combustible, or fire retardant treated wood. So ignition resistant means the material itself could burn, like it could be like a really big chunky wood. It has to be it has to be 4 inches or thicker wood to be considered heavy timber. So in the case where there's fire exposure, the wood would just char and not burn. So that would be considered ignition resistant. So non-combustible material would mean the material itself just would not burn, like cement, metal, fiberglass, stucco, or brick. So those are all, material that is approved in the fire area. So things that are not approved in the fire area are things like flammable wood shingle, like in the picture, plywood, or, wood siding. So those would be a big, huge no-no. Then next.
All right, next. eaves and under eave areas. So let's see which one is flammable and which one is not. So you can write in chat, the left one is flammable or the right one is flammable. This one seems pretty obvious. So, all right, let's see. Okay, so yes, it's very obvious. The one on the right is not flammable and the one on the left is. So the left, the eave and the raptor tails is a very traditional raptor tail and eave exposure that we see in most of the houses around here. They are usually the extension of the roof rafters, 2x4s or 2x6, and then you see these holes for the ventilation for the attic. And so this is very flammable, and amber and smoke and ashes and all sorts of stuff will just collect and just go into the holes, and the attic will just start catching on fire. And so for fire zones, what we need is eave materials need to be non-combustible, and eave vents need to be 1/8 or smaller. So that these holes for the vents, they will need to have a mesh to cover them that has the mesh of the holes can be 1/8 inch or smaller. Otherwise, we will need to have an eave that is on the right side, which is a soffit eave where there is no eave vents. The whole thing is boxed in. Usually they are boxed in not only with plywood, but also with a layer of 5/8 chipboard, and then finished with either hardy board, or in this case, it's finished with stucco. And in the case that we do need to have eave vents, we will need to use the WEI approved eave vents, which here, let's open up the link.
Oh, hold on.
There it is. So this sexy looking thing with honeycombs and mesh. So this item right here, they have in the Vulcan vent, they have various, they have it for dormers, continuous soffits and vents and gables. And so this would be an item that we would need to install for a high fire zone house, when in the case that we have to provide attic vents for the house.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. So, I guess the vent is kind of tricky because, if you do have an attic, you do need to vent it. So, if you close up, your eaves like this, and there is no vents for the attic whatsoever, what could be at risk is mold and mildew, in your roof rafters. Right, so you do have to kind of like figure out with like an architect maybe like what to do about, I guess, like your roof. So not every roof can do this where you can just like not have any eave vents. So you do have to figure out like how to do that. So oh, sorry, I just skipped over. Well, so flammable or fire-wise? So who thinks that this on the left, the window on the left is more flammable? Who thinks that the one on the right is more flammable? They look very, very similar. Please write in the chat if you are interested in finding out. They do look very, very similar, but there is some differences. So, this picture, the one on the left, is actually a double-paned tempered window. And then the one on the right is a single-pane steel window. And even though the window on the right is a steel window, it's made out of steel, it's only single pane, so that makes it weak. This one on the left is probably vinyl or fiberglass window, and vinyl is not the best against fire, but it is a non-combustible material. It's not like a wood window, so that makes it stronger for sure. So in the fire area, the windows or doors need to be double pane with one pane tempered. The material of the window or door needs to be non-combustible, metal, fiberglass, steel, or vinyl. Or in the case of a door, it has to be a solid core door with a fire rating. So on the right, examples of non-fire-wise windows and doors would be single pane windows, wood windows, or hollow wood veneer doors. So those would be, not very good. So here we're going to talk about discounts from insurance and home hardening. So we do have like the California Fair Plan list of home hardening material. There's Firewise Community and wildfire-prepare.org. So let's go to wildfire-prepare.org. So this is a certification program. They are like a nonprofit, and they had just recently started doing this thing. And basically, what they do, it is a program where you individually can apply. And I guess when you apply, you have to, I guess, like, prepare your home, do the home hardening. You have to pay them, and then there's an application fee, and then they will send out like an inspector home, and then when you pass, you guys can get certified. And then so the other one is Firewise Community. So this is a national program by but California is making it so that if you guys the way it works is that the different homeowners in a community can get together and apply to become a Firewise community. So you do need to get together with your neighbors and get a few of you guys together. And then once you become certified by Firewise community, then you guys can get insurance breaks. So I guess California had passed a law that said that insurance companies are required to give discounts if your home is showing, I guess, home hardening. So, and then this is the application for California Fair Plan. And so these are the, I guess, like things that they ask for. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. And if you have checked off these 5 elements on your home, then I guess California Fair Plan will give you a discount. I don't know why it's a little bit blurry, but it says here Class A fire rated roof, which means composition shingle, stone, concrete, clay tile, or metal. And then here they want 6 inches at the bottom of all exterior walls made out of non-combustible material. This is because they have found that I guess like a lot of times fire is wind driven, and so a lot of times embers might hit your wall, and then they might fall to the bottom. And so if there are flammable things at the bottom of your wall, it might start like a fire. So that's why they want to make sure that the bottom of the 6 inches especially is non-combustible. But as you've heard from our webinar, according to a fire code, the whole exterior has to be, non-combustible, not just the bottom 6 inches, to be, up to fire code. And then they are also asking for ember and fire resistant vents, upgraded windows. They're only asking for multi-paned. They didn't say anything about tempered glazing, but for fire-wise windows, they do have to be tempered and enclosed eaves. So they didn't say anything about WUI approved vents or anything like that, but they might be open to, I guess, like that kind of discussion. And then here are some other things. I guess like around the around the house. So cleared vegetation and debris from under the decks, 5-foot ember resistant zone around the house. So that means like no fences connecting to your house, no bushes, flammable bushes or anything like that. Removal of combustible sheds and other outbuildings from immediate surroundings of the home, at least for the immediate 30 feet. Defensible space compliance, including trimming trees, removal of brush and debris from yards. Okay, so, and if anybody is interested in that application, we're happy to share.
Okay, so this is a kind of a case study. This is a house in Pasadena near the Rose Bowl area. One of my projects from a few years back. So the house on the left is the before, and after remodel is the after. This house was built back in the 80s, and it was just I don't know if you are familiar with the houses built in the 80s, but it was just full of problem. I don't know why they just thought of cutting corners and very bad materials that are used in the house. And so this being a high fire zone in the very high vegetated mountain area by the Rose Bowl, first of all, the windows were all single pane, and I believe it was like a cheap aluminum window that was used on this house. All around the windows for the window casings were wood. It's got this huge wood trellis with overgrown vegetation right in front of the living room. Even though it's got clay tile roofs, the roof was having so much water leakage issue that, if a fire does happen, we don't know how that would handle the fire. Also a huge creepy window at the attic, which is a definite huge entry point for amber if the fire does happen in that area. And so we remodeled this house, probably finished a couple of years before the pandemic. And so we removed all the windows and we changed them out to dual pane, clad windows and tempered glass. The homeowner, they gave a fit on how expensive the windows were, but they are thankful now, I'm sure, that these are, good windows for fire zone. And all the wood, actually all the wood casings have been removed and we replaced them with hardy board sidings and casing around the windows. We removed the trellis and all the overgrown vegetation in front of the house. Removed the big window in the attic and changed it to a vent. Unfortunately, we were not able to get rid of the big giant trees around the area, but we are able to change out the roofing material to Class A. And the stucco on the wall on this house, originally, I think they were barely half an inch. They were probably like almost about a little bit thicker than a quarter of an inch thick. So they were not even the right thickness for fire rating. So we removed the entire stucco of the house and we stuccoed the whole entire house. So for a house to be, fire rated, it doesn't have to look, modern or bulky. In this case, we improved the house tremendously, and improved the fire rating on this house.
Well, I think that this is really great. I mean, not only like, home hardened, but like, it's so much more beautiful too. So, I think that like, in terms of like the value of the home, it's increased quite a bit, and I can see like how all the wood is like, it's termite damaged and, rotting. So good thing that's gone. So here is another case study of like a before and after, and this is a project in Rancho Palos Verdes, and this is the back of the house, and there was like a humongous shed that was like, really close to the house, and you can see like, there's like this wood trellis, right? And all this like, wood fence type things. So this was also in the fire zone, and we did like a addition in the back over here. So there was addition over here and an addition over here. We also put in a new deck out here, and then this is actually a pool at the bottom. There's a pool cover that's covering it. But so in any case, it might be kind of hard to see, but the eave is completely enclosed over here. This is, and then every wood product that's out on the deck and the outside is fire retardant treated wood, and also the decking is non-combustible Trex. This is double paned tempered glazing window that's fiberglass. And the exterior is stucco, which is also, I guess fire resilient. So this is another example of home hardening. You can see like, a big change from how it was before and then the new stuff. And here's another example.
Yeah, so these are two houses that were in the fire this past January. The one on the right, on the left, it's a dual pane tempered window, and you can see the fire got really close to the house. The bamboos are all charred. And one layer of the glass has actually got damaged by the fire, but excuse me, but the second layer was intact. And on the right side, this is a very old house with single pane window and steel window frame. And you can tell the glass were all completely busted by the fire. So yeah, so a lot of times my clients will ask me, why do they need to do dual pane? Why do they need to spend the extra money for the tempered glass? And looking at these two comparison, it's pretty obvious that, having a dual pane and tempered glass, putting that extra few $100s into each window, makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and so I attended a Zoom by the Fire Consortium, and they had actually come out to the burn site a few times to, I guess, like evaluate these houses and evaluate which houses burned or how they got burned, and then, which ones survived and why they survived. And they did say that a lot of point of entry for the flames were these windows. And so, like, for example, this house was made out of, CMU. So it's a completely non-combustible wall, but you can see that the window is completely busted out. And here, this house had double pane windows and even one pane broke, right? So the intensity of the fire was pretty great, but the window was able to withstand that. Here, the window did not. Also, it looks like we did discover eave vents here, and you can see like the roof is like completely gone here as well. So, it's really important to protect, your, I guess, like strengthening your windows and your eaves, having better like roof covering for sure for home hardening. And here we are. We're going to pass our baton to the landscape architects. Yay.
Thank you again, Leiko, for having us. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent. Thank you. So we, once again, we are, really wanted to get involved in sharing our information with our community that we are learning and practicing as landscape architects. And so we'd also like to thank another very large landscape architecture company. Great, thank you so much. SWA Landscape Architects. They are a very large firm. They do projects worldwide. They created some slides that they have graciously given us permission to use throughout our presentation. So you will see a few of their slides here. So this next image shows some information about defensible space. And this is a term that a lot of the public is hearing right now in the news and in newspapers. And what defensible space means is creating areas around your property or even within your community to help stop the spread of fire should there be a wildfire. And this slide shows a couple of overarching ways in which we can address defensible space. The top one is what you call the emergency wet zone. So this would be an example might be you live on a street that's got a lot of trees lining it, and a lot of the trees are very large and maybe ill kept. So it's like reaching out to your community to ask that those trees remain maintained so that firefighters can get in and out easily. And of course, those serve as fire breaks to stop the fire. Sprinkler systems is another way to quickly add some water to your property if needed. And if you have a pool, getting a pump that you can actually use some of that water to wet your property if you need to. The image below is talking about buffer zones. So these are roadways, hardscape, pools, as we mentioned, even a masonry wall at the perimeter of your property can help slow down or stop low brush fires or wildfires coming through into your property. So what are some easy fixes? As we, because some of us, immediately, might not be able to do big renovation on our home, but we're concerned. So what can we do right now to start making a difference and make our properties more safe? And one of the biggest things has to do with vegetation control. So the image at the top shows accumulated surface fuels. So these are weeds, low growing plant materials that are underneath larger trees. You will see tree branches that are closer to the ground. What you want to do is thin out these plant materials from your home. And notice how the image shows that the lower branches are trimmed off. Some of the weeds are mowed down, and you're creating more open spaces so you do not have what's called fuel ladders. And fuel ladders are the smaller plant materials and debris below that can catch on fire and then go up into the trees and create even a greater hazard. I do want to mention real quick that it's very important before you start taking out trees to check with your local city ordinances, because you may need to get permits to remove trees, and California does have several protected trees that do require permits for their removal when they are on your property. So that would just be something to pay attention to, because you don't want to get any fines. So moving back to a little bit more about defensible space. There, was mentioned a couple minutes ago that Leiko and Christina were talking about, and that is this defensible space. There was mention of you're keeping your property more clear in the first 100 feet from your home. So there are different zones that we are learning about or that we have in place. One of them is what we call zone 0. So this is the area closest to your property, up to 5 feet, 30 feet. Approximately. So it's actually kind of like 0 to 30, but the closest few feet Now we're not supposed to be planting anything within that 5 feet. Keep that perimeter very clear, put gravel there. Harden your property. You want to be careful of keeping a lot of outdoor furniture too close to your home, for example. Keep tree limbs trimmed away. Do not put, store things underneath any decks that overhang a slope. So, no flammables, don't keep your gasolines there or paint cans or anything like that. That should be cleared of all debris and weeds. So that's within that first 30 feet. After that, we get into defensible space zone 1. So this is where you can start having some plants, but they need to be selected with care. You don't want to have plant materials that are resinous. So that would be pine trees, eucalyptus trees, because those are very, very flammable, and create gaps around your shrubs or even groupings of shrubs. So these are some things that you can do. Defensible space zone 2 kind of is further out. And in this area, you can have a little bit more plant material, taller trees, but you still need to keep everything well maintained. And then the next slide shows a couple of examples of landscaping that you want to avoid. The photo on the left shows beautiful vines attached to a very nice home, but this creates a fuel ladder and could very easily ignite this home should there be a fire coming through. So it's very important to remove plant materials that are actually hanging on your home. The photo on the right shows also a very dense and not well kept landscaping. So this also creates a really high hazard having this type of plant material this close to the home and grouped so close together should a wildfire come through this area. Leiko and Christina also mentioned earlier fencing. So old wooden fencing can be a fuel bridge. So if a fire is coming through from an adjacent property, it can catch this wood on fire, and the fire can travel along these older fences and bring the fire quicker to your home. And so cleaning up and eliminating and replacing fences such as these with alternatives is highly recommended. And I think the next slide shows a couple of those. So for example, use metal fences and gates like aluminum, precast concrete, hardy board has been mentioned. Think about materials that do not catch fire at all, or that can slow a fire coming in your direction. And even sometimes slowing a fire can make a difference between firefighters, protecting and even maybe saving your property. So anyway, these are a few, things to think about. And I'm going to turn over to Stephanie Harris now, and she's going to talk to you more about fuel modification plans for high fire hazard severity zones.
Okay, thank you. Hi, this is the other Stephanie, Stephanie Harris. I think we can actually skip past or zoom through the next couple slides since we've already talked about the new fire maps. Okay, so perfect. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about defensible space and kind of some of the techniques that we use to increase that. So this first slide is basically kind of similar to what the other Stephanie showed you before. Just reiterating that first 5 feet around your home or any combustible structure. So also consider the 5 feet around, garages, ADUs, arbors, things like that. Anything like that, we want to keep that first 5 feet as free from anything flammable as we can. And then the sort of next most important area, and sometimes you'll hear it referred to as zone 1, or sometimes you'll see it referred to as zone A. But basically the idea is that that first 30 feet is where we also want to be careful, keeping the trees smaller, the shrubs lower, spacing our plants a little farther apart, just, you know, all in an effort to slow down any embers in the event of a fire. And one thing I want to point out on this slide too, at the bottom there, you can see the slope where it says 20%. One thing that we know is that sloping sites are more dangerous in terms of fires because the fire will race quicker on a slope than it will in a flat area. So those of you, and this is a common occurrence here on our peninsula, you know, where we have these beautiful homes built at the edges of canyons and things like that, where there's more of a likelihood of those embers and flames racing up the hillside. So, and this next slide, this is an example of a project we actually did recently. This is actually showing two properties side by side that we did. And so you can just kind of see in plan view a few of the techniques that we used. So it says larger trees in zone B. Again, that's 30 feet away from the house. So you can still have your trees, but, you know, not as close to the house. In this particular example, that back half of the property where the big trees are is a sloping area. So we included also some gravel breaks there, some areas where if embers and flames were to start coming up that hillside, you know, we would hope that with some stretches of gravel, like the other Stephanie said, you know, can we stop the flames? Can we slow down the flames? So putting some breaks in there too, you know, you don't necessarily need to have a solid planting in those types of environments. You can see here the plants are spaced farther apart. We have minimal understory. Understory, you know, is referring to the planting under trees. So like Stephanie said, we don't want to create a ladder where we have a tall shrub under a low tree where the flames can just race up. So if you're going to put plants under your trees, make sure they're really low, you know, 2 feet or less. And in this example, we were also able to do some strategic screening, meaning a lot of homeowners understandably want to create privacy around their home. And so in years past, the default has been just, you know, plant a great big privacy hedge going all the way around your home. Well, that is something that unfortunately, you know, creates sort of a bridge where fire can race along that hedge. So it's, you know, as you're thinking about privacy, maybe think about, are there specific, you know, windows we want to protect or specific views we want to block, and focus on those strategically rather than just a solid hedge. And also consider what your neighbor has already done. You know, one thing we've learned from submitting so many plans to the Los Angeles County Fire Department is that double hedges are a big no-no. So if your neighbor has a solid hedge, you don't want to, you know, plant an identical hedge right next to it. First of all, there's no need. And second of all, it increases, you know, the danger. So moving on to the next slide. So here's just some sort of visual examples of those techniques. So, you know, pick ground covers that are lower. You know, if you're going to have trees, pick things under the trees that, again, will stay lower. Or, you know, you don't necessarily need to have planting under your tree. Gravel can look very nice. And then so over on the right, there are some plantings that are spaced farther apart, you know, with gravel in between or mulch in between. I'll get into mulches a little bit later, but those are just some sort of visual examples of what we're talking about. And then here are a couple examples of sort of the hardening. You know, our architect friends have already talked about hardening in terms of your home, but it's also something you can consider in terms of the landscape. So for example, you know, most people want to have a patio, put that next to the house. If you want to have a lawn, put that closer to the house, and then keep your, you know, larger shrubs and trees farther away from the house. So over on the left, the two side yards, you know, you can see there are a few plants, but they are small, sort of water retentive plants. And the areas next to the house are primarily concrete and gravel and things that are going to be less flammable. So, and here's some examples, you know, and this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but here's some examples of plants that are more appropriate for that zone A, meaning that 30 feet away from your house. So the, you know, plants that will retain moisture, plants that don't get too large, you want to avoid, you know, woody plants, things that develop big woody stems and dead brush within the plant. So, and then similarly with trees, for when you're considering trees, you really want to be sure that nothing's touching the house, it's overhanging eaves, things like that. And also trees that can be kept smaller, trees that can be kept well irrigated. And like Stephanie mentioned, you know, avoid the super resinous trees, you know, the pine trees and the eucalyptus trees and things like that that tend to be more flammable. And then these are some examples of inappropriate planting. So you can see starting from the left, the great big pine tree smack up against the house is a no-no. That line of cypress is problematic for many reasons. You know, it's too close to the house. It's creating a bridge for embers, and it's a more flammable material. And again, the grasses, you know, large grasses and masses of grasses you want to avoid, especially near the house. And the pampas grass is actually very invasive and bad for ecology. So please don't plant that anywhere, actually, while we're on the topic. And so this slide, here are a couple landscapes that the one on the left is, I think, preferable. You have more hardscape. You do have some plants near the house. Ideally, we'd really actually like to see them farther away. But in this instance, you know, they are plants that are more likely to maintain moisture. And the fact that they're in pots, you know, you can move them around in a pinch also. So, and the one on the right, you know, it's ideally we'd like to have those plants farther away from the house. This isn't a terrible example, but you know, whenever you can, at least if you're going to have plants near the house, you know, this is a better example that there's some lower plants. What we really want to avoid is some of the ones that Stephanie was showing in the previous slides, where they're, you know, the big, tall, bushy plants. So, okay, mulches. So this chart, I think it was the LA County Fire Department did a study testing the flammability of various mulches. And they looked at the height of the flames, the rate of spread, and the overall temperature. So you can kind of see over on the left that the big loser was shredded rubber with pine needles and shredded red cedar kind of close behind. And then over on the right are some of your better choices, with composted wood chips, you know, being the least flammable of all these. But I want to reiterate too that in that real critical 5-foot zone, we would recommend avoiding mulch at all, or wood type mulches. You know, that's a great area. The area around your house is a good area to do gravel or decomposed granite or something that's really not flammable at all. Would be much preferable. So I think that is all I have to say there. Here's our email. If you'd like have questions for us, feel free to reach out. We're happy to provide more information and, you know, additional resources should you need them.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephanie and Stephanie. That was really, really good. Very informative. I learned so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're opening this up for any Q&A. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions? Please unmute yourself and feel free to, like, you know, speak up, or if you want, you can type it in the chat. I am interested in finding out, I guess, like, you know, the attendees, like, you know, what it is, you know, why you guys are, you know, came to this, or like if you're a professional, industry professional looking to find out some more information, or if you're like a homeowner.
I've got a question just about some of the discrepancies that I'm looking at in various manuals, like I put a post in for a USGBC guidelines that just came out. And most of this seems to be geared towards, having much wider property line setbacks, especially in side yards. I mean, they recommend 15 feet for each house. And I know that in our Altadena area, 5 feet is kind of the norm. So,
You're talking about defensible space, right?
yeah, defensible space between the property line and the building face.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's being addressed in some of these diagrams.
I think the USGBC, I did have like some questions about that too, because there were some conflicting information about, we were asking about, what is it, oak trees too. So maybe, don't want to put you guys on the spot, but do you guys have a comment?
Well, if you're talking about the defensible space in terms of planting, so there have been, like you mentioned, I've seen some slightly conflicting things about oak trees, and I think the important thing to remember is, if the fire gets hot enough, anything can burn. But I have seen there was an article. I'll have to see if I can find it and dig it up. But there was an article, I believe, in the LA Times about how the oak trees actually, in some instances, were acted in a sense as ember catchers, and they didn't. They kind of in some of the larger hillside areas and properties, they created a kind of screen that caught some of the embers and may have actually played a role in protecting some houses. But we've always followed the guidance of the Los Angeles County Fuel Modification Unit, and so their recommendations are 30 feet is really sort of the critical, where they're very particular about not having any larger trees such as oak trees within that 30 feet. 5 feet is what they call the ember zone, where they really don't want anything. But that first 30 feet is where they're saying, keep the shrubs really small, they only allow particular trees. So what we do, when we frequently have to submit plans to the LA County Fire Department, and they have very particular rules. They basically have lists of plants, and there are plants that they just will not allow us to put within 30 feet of a structure. So we've always sort of relied on their guidance as far as, what you can put where. I'm not sure, Jay, if that's totally answering your question.
Yeah, I mean, somewhat, but it just seems that, in like this diagram here, I mean, it's obviously very specific to a site that has a very, very large plot for the house. Whereas now, if we look at what happened in Pacific Palisades and Altadena, where lots are maybe 50 feet wide or 45 feet wide.
So, like the defensible space that's like 5 feet, 30 feet, 100 feet actually would go into your neighbor's lot as well. So I think the idea is that you have to talk to your neighbor and collaboratively reduce like that that vegetation in that 100-foot zone or something like that. So that's my understanding. And also this defensible space thing, I mean, this is the LA County Fire Department, right? That's enforcing it. And USGBC, even if they had released their recommendations, I'm not saying that in terms of building permits, we're required to follow that, right? Are they pretty much guidelines?
Well,
yeah, it's the
sorry.
guidelines, that I saw, but go ahead.
Oh, well, what I was going to say is what we run into is certain projects involving new construction. If you're doing new construction in a high fire hazard zone, before you can get a building permit, you're typically required to submit landscape plans to the county fire department. So that's where we run into, they're more than, in that instance, they're more than just guidelines, they're requirements. So we have to follow these rules for those types of plans in order for the landscape to get improved and, in order for the homeowner to get their building permit. So some of that kind of depends on where you are. Are you in, for the homeowner, the question is, what kind of construction am I doing and where am I? And is this required for my building permit, or is this just, a good idea? So.
Wait, so have you encountered the USGBC, regulations, like as part of building?
No, we've always had to adhere to the county. So when we do projects in high fire zones in LA County, they typically go to the LA County Fire Department. Some cities have their own requirements, and then we've just done a couple in Orange County, and they have their own fire.
Defensible space as
Yeah, and their rules are similar. I did one over there, and there were slightly different requirements, but the idea, the overall theory, I think anywhere you go is going to be the same, because fire is fire.
Because I think the defensible space thing is from Cal Fire, right? That they are the ones that publish this.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of overlap in guidelines, you'll see differences in terms of, some of them call it zone 1, some of them call it zone A, there's a little bit, there's some different terminology floating around that I've seen, but the sort of best practices tend to overall be the same, which is, keep the flammable things farther away from the house, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Right.
And I know that there's been, and you guys are probably aware too of all of the, lots of discussion going on in areas where there needs to be a lot of rebuilding happening, like changing what the setbacks are, giving people more space and not building so close to the property lines. And even, getting communities to think a lot differently about how the community's rebuilt, about creating, maybe more greenways in the form of, bike paths and walking paths and those types of things to like weave in defensible space, like within the existing community that maybe did not exist before.
I hope that helped your question, Jay.
Yep. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
No question, but I think it'll be so interesting to see what's going to happen with the Altadena community, with the building back, considering, all these things that we talked about, especially with landscaping and defensible space. Also, I'm just very curious how the other cities are going to handle the whole tree situation where, I'm in Pasadena, San Marino area, and they are so protective of the trees.
Yeah.
Have properties that are just a huge tree pretty much right against the house, and we're not able to pull a permit to cut it down. Things like that. Just so it'll be interesting to see how these start to develop, and just really looking forward to see how we can help the Altadena community as well and the homeowners, as we continue to help redesign all these properties with defensible space and just better landscaping and planting.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, okay, great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for attending. We are past our time. This was I don't know, I thought it was a very informative, webinar for me, for sure, especially learning so much from the experts, the landscape architects and stuff. So in any case, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And we will, forward the question to the right, personnel. So in any case, wait, is that it, Christina? Do we have another slide?
Let's see. Well, we're doing webinar every first Wednesday of the month. And for our next one, we're looking into doing one with Gigacrete, which is a concrete wall company. So there it is.
Yeah, so this would be really interesting. It's an innovative construction technique. They're supposed to, I guess, like make the construction cost like 1/3 of the construction cost, and then also, I guess, shorten the construction time like by quite a lot. You can build a whole house in like about a month or so. So this is like very, very interesting. It's a company that's located in Las Vegas. So in any case, stay tuned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.